Hello, this week's lecture is about the process of revision, which is actually the process of rewriting or revisioning or re-looking at your work. So it's about writing, rewriting, and editing, including proofreading, which should come last. So as you are finishing up your paper, or even any time during the writing process, quickly skim over your entire paper. You should read it yourself. At some point, you may need to read your paper out loud just so that you're not reading what you think is on the page, but what is really on the page. And ask yourself whether you've included all parts of the assignment. Look back at the assignment sheet. Don't trust your memory because you may forget an important part of the assignment. Does the text of the paper fulfill the requirements of this assignment? If your paper asks or your assignment asks for at least 4 pages of text, do you have at least 4 pages of text? Did the assignment call for research, and did you do the research and also put in-text citations for all material found in your research inside the paper, as well as listing it on a references page? Is your text double spaced? Have you indented the first line of each paragraph? Have you put extra space in between the paragraphs, which needs to be removed? And make sure that each paragraph is about 1/3 to 1/2 a page long, and run spell check because it's really important to do that. Read your entire paper with an open mind. See what's really there and not what you think is there. I've been guilty of that myself, where I think I've put something in the paper and it's not really there. And so your first draft or two of your paper does not need to be perfect. In fact, trying to be perfect will slow you down. So go ahead and just put everything you can think of in the first draft or two, and then you're going to mold that into a better shape and make sure everything is documented as you write and put it into the paper, not at the last minute. So document as you go. And your early stages should focus on synthesizing your ideas, connecting your research material to your ideas, and organizing your material. And it's really helpful to read your paper out loud because you can hear what's really on the page better than you can sometimes see what's on the page. Read what you wrote in your introduction. Try to read it as if you're a member of the audience. Do you have a strong thesis statement? What is your main point? If you can't tell what your main point is in the introduction, your reader will not be able to tell either. And have you put in definitions for specialized terminology? If you're writing about a medical topic, for instance, have you explained the acronyms and your actual topic of what you're trying to tell your audience about? And then read your conclusion. The conclusion may be the most important part of your paper. That's where you get to have the last word with your audience. Have you repeated your main idea so that they remember for sure what your point is? Have you wrapped up all the main subtopics of your paper? Did you promise something in your introduction that you never delivered? Or did you put something in your paper that was really important that you'd have not mentioned in your conclusion? And sometimes I see a paper in which a whole new topic is started in the conclusion, which leaves the reader feeling like they want more, but the paper is already finished. Your paper's journey, I like to think of writing a paper like figuring out how I'm going to make my trip from St. Louis to Florida, for instance. How am I going to drive? What highways? Where am I going to stop for the night? Depending on how I'm planning to drive. And so how are you going to get from point A, which is your introduction, to point B, which is your conclusion? And so think about that. Does your paper have a logical progression from the introduction to the conclusion? And then are you making smooth transitions between ideas, sentences, and paragraphs? And there's a web article that I've given you the address for here on this slide that you can look up later because the lecture file will be available. And then make sure that you have your subtopics and that you put all the material for each subtopic in the same section so that you don't start talking about something 3 different times in the paper, which is confusing to your audience. You can actually outline near the end of the writing process to see if everything in your paper really went together as you thought it would. It's okay to make changes in your ideas and to grow and progress as you write your paper. However, if you have gone way off track from what you planned, outline again to see if what you do have now makes sense. And maybe it's still fine, or maybe you need to move some things around to make your paper more organized for the reader, because the reader is who you're really concerned with. Can they understand what you're talking about? Are you giving them a message that's coherent? And are you getting your argument across and maybe changing their mind from what they thought originally to what you're letting them know is how possibly they should feel about your topic? Getting input on your paper. I like to ask a family member or a work friend to look over my work that's important and see what they think of it. But maybe you have a classmate in the class. When we did the peer reviews on the 3rd paper, did you have someone who read your paper and gave you some feedback? Do you have a trusted family member, friend, or coworker to read your paper and make some helpful comments? If you have questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them if you email them or post them on the discussion board. And also, it can be really helpful to work with SLU Writing Services, although the time is coming to the point where you may not have time to ask them for help. So do you have enough lead time? You need at least a couple days for SLU Writing Services to look at your paper and let you know what they think. And then at the end of your process, where you've done your editing and thinking about your organization, now you're going to do editing for grammar and spelling, which is often something your instructors will mark, but it's really not the most important thing in the paper. But as you are looking at your paper on your last edit, your proofreading rounds, does each sentence have a main noun and verb? Do you have a subject and verb in every sentence? If you do not, then you probably have a fragment. Does your paper have long sentences that leave you breathless when reading them out loud? You may need to split them into shorter, clearer sentences. Are there any words in the paper that seem to be out of place when you read it out loud? You think, maybe that word didn't mean what I thought it did. This is when having an outside person, a friend, a coworker, a family member that you trust, read your paper and they could say, I don't think this is the right word here, and help you out, because every mistake or problem that someone catches, including you or an outside proofreader, that's one less problem that your instructor ever sees. And of course, I do suggest using spell check, but grammar check sometimes basically is wrong. So grammar check is a little more iffy, but spell check is very important. But it doesn't catch the wrong word that's spelled correctly. It will just catch words that are spelled incorrectly. And then this is some information about revision from the Purdue OWL, so you could follow this link to get some information from Purdue OWL about revising your papers. And then this is really important. A careful revision of a paper can be worth at least a letter grade. It could also mean the difference between whether your paper is eligible for revision or not. And so if you're near the end of your writing process and you're running out of time, turn in what you have. That's the most important thing, because if your paper's on time, it's eligible for revision. But please try to save time for the end of your writing process so that you can do a careful revision yourself, and then possibly your paper will no longer be eligible for an official revision, and you won't have to spend any more time on it again. You'll be completely finished. So try to save some time for revision. It's very important, but it's even more important to turn your paper in on time and then watch your email for any possible revision opportunities. So I'm really looking forward to reading everyone's final paper, and I hope you have a wonderful week.